Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining our live event. My name is Victoria, and I work for Factorial HR, which is an all in one HR software company offering digital solutions to HR professionals all around the world. Today, we are very excited to have Carla Pearce with us. She'll be discussing the topic how to increase employee retention with a good corporate mentoring program. Hello, Carla, and welcome.
Hi, Victoria. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having us. so, First, let me introduce Carla to all of you. Carla is currently a network manager for the Girls Network. This not for profit organization aims to empower and inspire girls from disadvantaged backgrounds by connecting them with female mentors. Uh, Carla had spent a number of years in HR, specifically learning and development, where employee engagement was a huge focus. Perhaps more importantly, Carla took part in a mentoring partnership at her place of work that ultimately meant both her and the company she worked for benefit from high levels of engagement, innovation, and productivity. During the next hour, Carla will discuss these focus points: what the current workforce want from their employees, how and why a mentoring program can help them achieve that, how to implement a company wide mentoring program. She will also present a case study about how a good corporate mentoring program can help your organization retain its employees. Before we start, I'd like to invite you all to tell us in the chat where you're tuning in from. Also, feel free to ask your questions throughout the event. I will write them down and Carla will answer them in the Q&A section in the end. At Factorial, we love to simplify your HR processes, so we invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can follow our live events that happen bi-weekly. Hello, Carla, and welcome again. We are happy to have you with us today, and you can take over from here.
Okie doke. Thank you very much, Victoria. And yes, thank you, Factorial HR, for inviting me on today. It's a topic that I'm very passionate about on both sides of the spectrum as well, which I will talk to you a little bit about as we move through the presentation. Now, what I will say is that this is a huge topic. I could talk to you about this for days on end, but what I've tried to do is really condense it down into this hour for you. So that you can take the most valuable stuff away with you to your teams and things that you can really reflect on. So after today, you will know a lot more about me, actually. I'll be sharing quite a bit of my background with you, which I'll explain a little bit more in a moment. We will look at the reports that have been done over the last year or so, the back end of last year, actually, around what it is that employees in 2022 are really looking for. Just yesterday, I heard that in the UK, job vacancies have now outnumbered the actual people that are looking for jobs. So this is something that we really want to tap into at the moment and make sure that we're retaining and attracting the right talents. We'll also look at why mentoring is the right route for you to go down in towards addressing those things that employees are looking for in 2022. And then what we'll also do is talk about the key steps that you can take to be able to implement your own mentoring program, but one that is also successful and something that you can track appropriately as well. So without further ado, a little bit about me. That is me pictured there in front of the Live building in Liverpool, where I'm from, if you did not recognise the accent already. And I was very tempted when I started filling out this slide, to talk about my qualifications, my experience, all of those things that you probably expected to see on an About Me slide in a presentation like this. But honestly, it's not the most important thing that you need to know about me today. And that's because that's not what mentoring is about either. Mentoring isn't about what a person has already achieved and where they are now. It's absolutely about where they've been, where they're going, and what that growth has looked like in between. So that's what I'm going to talk to you a little bit about, really. And it's also the biggest point that I want to put out to you, or at least the first point that I want to put out to you today, is that to be able to run a truly successful mentoring program in your place of work, it's to genuinely care about these aspects of your employees' lives as well. This can, it can be a really personal experience being mentored. And so it's really important that you kind of understand that before you go into matching people or even thinking about whether mentoring is the right way to go. So what I've done here, I've split my professional and personal life into 3 stages, and that's before, during, and after mentoring, because it really was that impactful for me in my life. So let's look at before. So I grew up in an area in Liverpool that suffered from high deprivation. The school I went to was at the top and bottom of every league table the school would not want to be in. It was later demolished. The region that I come from had and still has, within the last 5 years or so, some of the lowest levels of A-level qualifications, which are pretty much the minimum level of qualification an employee looks for these days, at around 2%. And it also has the lowest levels of university admissions in the country as well. Now, the reason I'm talking to you about this is because these are challenges that some of your employees will have faced as well when they were growing up. And you'll probably find that a lot of your junior employees can relate to that kind of background, but nevertheless have the potential and probably have the aspirations, if they allow themselves to believe that they could do more. So that's me kind of before. Luckily, I was quite naturally academic, so I was able to follow the path right through to qualifying with a university degree. So that already put me in a better position than most. But because of the background I've come from, I had an overwhelming, lack of self-belief. I didn't have any sense of belonging in white-collar roles particularly, and I had a huge aversion to taking risks as well. And so that meant that even graduating with a degree, I still spent years in low-paid, low satisfaction, and actually quite low-status roles as well, regardless of any kind of potential or talent that I might have had. So I got to around the age of about 28. And that's when things really started to change for me, when I joined a company actually covering maternity leave for just a 12-month role in entry-level administration. Now, to me, I'd absolutely made it. I was no longer working hard manual labour. I was no longer working 12-hour shifts. I could switch my laptop off at 5 p.m, had my weekends to myself. So that situation is somewhere where I probably would have quite happily stayed had I not met my mentor at that stage. And I do want to say that for most people, for a lot of people, that's also a very valid route for a lot of people in their work. But for me, I often felt that I had a lot more to give. So I was very lucky that I ended up meeting my mentor at this organisation. And what the mentor did for me is she gave me that self-belief. She gave me that access to opportunity where I was able to start taking risks and really pushing myself outside my comfort zone and trying new things and seeing if I could do these things. And what that resulted in was me becoming, going from a 12-month maternity cover to being a fully qualified, high-achieving L&D partner for that same company. And that was within the space of about 4 years. I had several promotions. I was given more and more responsibility. And by the end of it, I was leading on the employee engagement initiatives. I created the internal voice of the company at the time. And I'm proud to say that I really was an integral part of the company's progress in employee morale. Now, as I say, the reason I'm sharing all of that is because that is not unique. I am not special. I am just somebody who needed that person in that corner to identify my skills when I couldn't identify them for me. And so essentially, it really did change the trajectory of my career. And as a result, the company that I worked for benefited from that as well. Now, the biggest thing you probably want to know is, why am I not at this company anymore? Why is it that I'm working at the Girls Network instead? If mentoring is this great tool for retention, why did I go? Well, I still stand by that claim. It absolutely is a great tool for retention. It won't, people will never stay in a company forever. We know that the average tenure of the predominant workforce nowadays is about 18 months to 2 years. So, that's what we can kind of expect to get out of our employees. And anything more than that really is a true test of loyalty. But what I can say is that I stayed at that company a further 2 years than I probably would have had I not been mentored. And actually, it was those final 2 years that I was in that company where I was my most effective, where I really helped the company turn the dial towards the goals that they were wanting to achieve. So since then, as I say, I've joined a not-for-profit organisation called the Girls Network. And what we do is we offer mentoring programs to young women and girls from low-income backgrounds from my very region. So you could say the role was made for me. And what we also do is we work with corporations to implement mentoring programs in their place of work. And that means that their employees can become mentors to what is essentially our future leaders, our future workforce, and really open up that talent pool to them at an early age as well. But I'll talk a little bit more about that later. What we'll talk about now is what mentoring is. Now, it may seem like a really simple question on the face of it, but it is often one that goes unchecked. And I think it's the first hurdles that, companies quite often fall at as well. So at the Girls Network, we strongly believe that to be able to achieve in life, everyone needs a dose of 3 things, a nice healthy dose of 3 things. And that's what you can see on the right there. It's self-belief, skills, and the access to opportunity as well. All 3 are equally important. And, some of us may have more than one or the other, but if you are missing out on any one of those 3 things in life, then that's when you really will face challenges in the goals that you're aiming for. Now, a good mentor is someone who should be able to provide those access to opportunities by helping the mentee expand their network. We've all heard the saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. That's no more relevant than in the place of work. A mentor will also act as a guide. They're not there to be a teacher, to tell you what to do. They're there to, empower you to, put all the pros and cons on the table and empower the mentee to make the decisions and take those informed and calculated risks in business. And to help them develop that real growth mindset that will help them then cultivate the skills that they need and that you need from them to achieve their own personal and organizational goals as well. We all know no good business decision, no powerful innovation is made in the comfort zone. It's a pretty, dangerous place to be, actually. And finally, it's simply having someone in your corner. That really is, I believe, the catalyst to self-belief is just simply having someone who you respect and have a mutual understanding with, who tells you that you can, and you believe them so that you can believe in yourself, essentially. What it isn't is someone who does everything for you, someone who gives you all the answers, and someone who will put everything on a plate for you, give you the job you want. And it definitely isn't someone with expectations or judgments, regardless of whether you agree or disagree with what the mentee is striving for, really. And that's a really important thing to talk to your mentors about before they even decide to participate in a mentoring program. What is expected of them as a mentor, and what isn't. So let's look at what workers want. Now, I won't spend too long on this. As HR professionals, I'm sure you're aware, you'll see it on a daily basis, and hopefully you'll be getting feedback already from your employees about, what it is that they want. But here's the kind of reports that have come out. So Hays released their What Workers Want report at the back of 2021. And I would recommend giving it a read. It's a fantastic resource for understanding the kinds of things that employees are looking for when they're at that moment of deciding whether to stay or move on from somewhere. They surveyed well over 13,000 respondents and looked at a lot of the key areas that you can see here. And the survey actually discovered a lot of positives. The workforce and the employees of today are really ambitious. they do have a real propensity to be loyal. You know, they want to work for a company that they believe in and stay there and champion them. You know, but they also want a lot of other things, like the things that we can see on the slide here, not to mention things like work-life balance and, you know, to be recognized for their achievements. So some of these will come as no surprise to you, but some of them are also really coming to the fore at the moment, and they certainly need to be addressed by a lot of workers. And it's understanding what your workforce in particular wants from these components, really, that will help you understand what type of mentoring program you want to implement, which we'll look at a little bit later. So firstly, competitive pay comes out on top in the report, hence the crown. Cash is king after all, and it's probably no surprise to you either that pay is the single most important factor in the decision as to whether to stay somewhere or move on. Second comes in cultural fit, actually, and next comes career progression, and then after that you've got training and development. What follows at the very end of that is benefits, which I've actually encapsulated with the word diversity, because it's the benefit of working in a tolerant and inclusive environment that appreciates all types of people is really something that employees are finding a lot of value in nowadays as well, much more than we might have used to. So what we're going to do now is we'll look into each one of these from the perspective of a mentoring program, and hopefully you can see just how far-reaching the impact and the effects can be, you know, with one simple initiative. So we'll look at cultural fit first. I won't be addressing competitive pay actually, because obviously that's very much down to the organisations to make sure that employees are being paid what they're worth, really. However, pay does come into career progression a little bit as well, so we will look into it at some stage. So cultural fit. Now, the good news is that both employers and employees were pretty much on the same page. You know, we all agree that good cultural fit is important. Employers actually rate culture above the individual's potential and qualifications, according to the Hayes reports, which is fantastic to see. You know, that is really what's going to create an inclusive culture. And employees, as I say, rate it second, although they rated it second as the most important factor, many would be prepared to take a pay cut if it meant that they could achieve a greater cultural fit. So it really is coming very close to the top there. So with that being said, here are some statistics to get your head around. Now, of course, I'm sure many of us have got a fantastic multi-generational workforce, and if you have, that in itself is what makes a mentoring program such a promising thing. You know, it's that diversity of life experience and thought alone, where we can really learn something from each other. So I 100% recommend it if that's the kind of workforce that you're in at the moment. We also know that the prevailing workforce is millennial. You know, it's something like 50% alone of our workforces are made up of millennials. So that's why I've included this statistic in particular there. So, you know, millennials intending to stay with their organization for more than 5 years, which is massive when we know that 2 years is usually, you know, the pinnacle for them. They're twice as likely to have a mentor than not. So 68% of millennials who retain for 5 years, it's usually because they've got a mentor. That actually more than halves when they haven't been mentored. So it goes right down to about 32%. And what I can say is that having experienced, you know, a mentorship myself, that's absolutely down to the cross-department bonds that you can forge, you know, the insight into the company values and learning how you can really live them from your mentor as well. If you have a good mentor who also lives those company values and demonstrates them for you. And it's also the knowledge sharing. It's absolutely priceless from a mentor. And that goes both ways as well. The mentor can learn so much from the mentee. There was also a report released by the Black Inclusion Index, and they've revealed that there's a 25% difference between the perception of how well an organisation is performing for Black inclusion and the actual reality for Black employees. So again, there's a real miscommunication happening somewhere between how well an organization thinks it's doing and actually the reality of it for its employees. And that is a bridge that that is a gap, that can be bridged with the use of a mentoring program, absolutely. Giving them that psychological safety with a person who may be in a more senior position where they can, talk about and feedback about their experience. We also know that Gen Z, who are obviously our incoming workforce, are around 54% say that they are exclusively attracted to the opposite sex. And this is something that isn't obviously potentially not being appreciated as much as it could be, and something that is perhaps a culprit for bad cultural fit and bad cultures as well. So according to a report by recruitment firm Total Jobs, almost 2/3 of trans people, so that's 65%, believe it is necessary to keep their identity a secret from colleagues. And that's so that they can feel safe and secure in their jobs. Unfortunately, things haven't got better. So 5 years ago, that was actually only 50%. So there's definitely something going on there as well, where people feel like they can't bring their whole selves to work. And that's definitely something that a mentoring program, again, if implemented well, can support with. And I suppose the reason I'm sharing these statistics as well is to explain just how rapidly the workforce is evolving. We had a much more homogenous kind of culture that we were accustomed to, even in the recent past, really. And what a mentoring program can do is show that you appreciate that diversity, and you want to harness the thoughts and ideas of our workforce. It can cultivate that culture of psychological safety. It can embrace your colleagues' voices, and it can set up a really genuine feedback system with real quality feedback that you might not get from your standard employee engagement surveys, for example, if you even implement them at the moment. Again, it can create opportunities for employees, and it can add value based on their own experiences as well, which again is priceless information that you can get from them. And I recently saw a quote actually that said, "Inclusion is one thing, empowerment is another." And I thought that was really powerful, actually. We've all done a lot of amazing work over the last few years in actually diversifying our workforce, welcoming the workforce in, and then actually including them. Now we're at the stage of implementing that empowerment as well. That is the next stage to really create a great culture. So that's cultural fit, and that's how mentoring can really help with that. Next, we'll look at career progression. So as I say, according to the Hayes report, we have a really ambitious workforce. They want to reach the top of their game. They just need that growth opportunity and that ability and that space to progress. And that is right before training and development opportunities. So again, we've got some statistics here for you. And this slide, really, I'm going to let speak for itself. So this came from a study that Gartner did way back in 2006. Now, this is before we even harnessed the real power of what mentoring programs are. And the results of this study absolutely speak for themselves. It was such a powerful thing. So they studied over 1,000 employees over the course of around 5 years, and they all entered this mentoring program. And what we can see here is that 25% had a salary grade change, and that's actually compared to only 5% of their non-mentored co-workers. 72% of mentees were retained, and that's compared to 49% of employees who were not mentored. So, you've got at least a third rate of retention there. And the mentored employees were actually promoted 5 times more often than those not on the program. What's not up there actually is that the same study found that the mentors received promotions 6 times more often than their peers. Also, we can see that the retention rate of the leaders who mentored was also 20% higher than the retention rate of those that did not participate in the program. And it's these kinds of studies. This study is one of the bigger studies and one of the more groundbreaking ones, which is why I've included this one in particular. But I really would recommend that you go out and do your research around other mentorships that are going on, just so you can see, in black and white, why it's a good business decision. I'll also share some companies that are doing some really good mentoring at the moment as well, a little bit later. So that's career progression. I've also got a little bit of a case study for you here from a mentor in Liverpool who's been working with the Girls Network for the last 6 months. So her company implemented a mentoring program with us, and she's been meeting with her mentee, who's a 16-year-old girl in the area, for the last 6 months. And within those 6 months, the mentor has been so inspired by her mentee, pushing herself out of her comfort zone, doing the things that scare her, and seeing the growth in her, that it's meant she's gone on to apply for jobs that she never would have applied for had she not been a mentor in the first place. And she said that to me a couple of weeks ago when we caught up, that she absolutely wouldn't be in the position she was in right now had she not mentored in the first place. So it can be just as important for the mentor as it can be for the mentee in terms of career progression as well. Okay. So next we'll move on to training and development. Now, this is an area very close to my heart, as I was very much included in the training and development of the company that I worked for previously, and it's something that I'm very interested in now, all seniority levels right up to C-suite, they always consider an organization's training policy, when they're thinking about where to move. However, I do acknowledge that there's a lot of work to be done in terms of educating employees about the type of training and development opportunities that are on offer. So the Hayes report even said that employees want training, but that they may be underutilizing what's on offer at the moment. So it may be that you have some incredible training and development opportunities at the moment that just aren't being picked up for some reason. You may get the same feedback that I had back in the day, that, they've got a day job to do at the end of the day. And, that takes priority over any kind of learning space. So I suppose what we have to do then is think about how are we communicating those training and development offerings, and what type of training are we offering, and can they see the value in that? So there's a lot of challenges that L&D face, and I feel you, like I've been there as well, and absolutely a mentoring program is something that I would hope you are really pushing with senior leaders at the moment, if it isn't already something that is implemented in your company. So LinkedIn's Workplace Learning Report back in 2017 found that time and money were the biggest barriers that L&D leaders faced. And what it actually revealed is that there is a huge gap in value between the organizations that pay for the learning and the learning, and those who participate in the learning as well. Again, a very familiar situation that I remember quite well. And what we need is for companies to really buy into L&D in order to be able to allocate the budget to support it. And likewise, employees need to see the value in learning that they're getting. So a mentorship, again, is something that can bridge that value gap. The mentees gain access to senior leaders. The senior leaders realize that mentoring more junior employees develops their leadership skills and gives them access to new perspectives. And then you can really harness that perspective as well of your young workers. Once both parties have realized the value of mentorship, it's so much easier to get the budget and time commitment for further learning and development initiatives. And that is something that can really help your organization turn into a truly genuine learning culture. There's nothing, one of the things that I found really powerful with my mentorship at the time was hearing it one-on-one around the different L&D offerings that we had, as opposed to in an email, was so much more powerful for me, and something that I actually took on board. And it meant that I harnessed all of the L&D offerings that we had in that company. I've got a little Chanel logo there. It's not a mistake. It's another little case study for you if you're into those. There's a great book called Rebel Ideas that I would recommend you read. But in it talks about how Chanel really did harness the perspective of their young workers to bring themselves back into relevance. So, of course, I'm sure we're all very familiar with the brand. It's been going for a very long time. But it did get to a point where it was becoming a little bit stale. It seemed a little bit old-fashioned, and it was really not appealing to the new generation of consumers. So what they did is they implemented a youth board, and that youth board came in to talk to the exec board and tell them all the things that they should be doing apologies, to come back into relevance. And what it did is it really gave them a fresh outlook and, the power to be able to appeal to this new audience. And it really did bring them back into relevance. Okay, so diversity. So, as I say, this kind of comes under the umbrella of benefits. Apologies, let me just grab some water. This kind of comes under the umbrella of benefits, but it was the one that stood out to me the most, because it's definitely something that is coming to the fore in terms of what people are actively and openly saying that they want. And what they want is a tolerant environment, one where they feel like they can bring their ideas, their opinions, and their thoughts to the table without that fear of retribution. And, that's why organizations like the Girls Network exist, because access to opportunities aren't equally distributed among members of diverse groups. So being able to implement a mentoring program is something that can help us do that. So we can see here that only 8% of FTSE 100 CEOs are female, and actually there are no women of colour, which is unbelievable. Access to opportunities aren't equally distributed among members of diverse groups. And we can see that companies with higher rates of diversity regularly outperform companies with more homogenous demographics. So not only is it the right thing to do, to really embrace diversity and that diversity of thought in the workplace, it's actually a really good business decision. And again, a mentoring program will help you, harness that diversity of thought and create that environment where people feel like they have someone they can go to really offload their ideas and their opinions for the good of the company. Okay. So there's the facts, the figures, the case studies, just around those top key areas that employees are looking for in an employee, whether that's a new one or the one that they're with at the moment. And hopefully that is the kind of stuff that you can take to your CEOs, your exec, your boards, to really explain why it is that we need to be doing this. Once you've had sign off, this is how I would recommend the key steps that you'll want to take to be able to implement a mentoring program. So, key logistics here. I've split these into 5 different roles, but try to tailor it to what you want specifically. But the first one is to define the program's goal. So you want to be asking yourself questions like where the target employees are on their professional journey. So is it that you want to target new people? Are you doing a big recruitment drive at the moment? And could the onboarding be better? Is it that you want to target those in that ongoing development stage? You know, that they're at that 18-month, 2-year phase. They're starting to get a bit maybe complacent, or, you know, they have ideas that perhaps they're not bringing to the table. Or it could be that, you know, they've got great ideas already. They just don't feel like they can bring them to you. They don't have that safety. And then, of course, there's the reverse mentoring as well, which is around learning from our younger, not even younger, more junior employees, like with the case study of Chanel, for example. So with that, you'll want to ask things like what development needs they have and what can really motivate those individuals as well to participate on your program. And that's when your insights to your employees' engagement can really help. So number 2 is to outline the mentoring process. So that'll be things like whether the mentor-mentee relationship, whether that'll be one-to-one, will it be project-based, or will it be in a group setting? You know, there's lots of different ways that you can apply a mentoring process. How long will the mentorship last? So with the Girls Network, we do a full academic year, and we do close to a year's worth of mentoring once a month for an hour. But it could be a lot shorter. It could be, you know, something in the space of a quarter. I do apologise, my throat's gone very dry. Take a big gulp. Okay. You'll also want to think about when and where mentees and mentors meet. Is it at the workplace? Are you going to carve time out during the working day for this? Or is it additional opportunities outside of the working day? And then something else you'll really want to think about during the outline is how are you going to track the success of the program? So at the Girls Network, we track our program at the beginning, the middle, and the end, and we ask similar questions all the way through so that we can monitor how things are progressing. So then number 3, you've got selecting the program participants. Now, that really relies on quite a diverse pool of mentors and mentees. You don't want to be picking out of the same department, the same backgrounds. You really want to try and get a real mix of everyone. And you'll also want to use those first 2 steps as your guides to your selection. So those goals and those outlines. You might want to choose to accept applications from anyone interested in the program, or you might want to reach out to people on an invitation-only basis. Again, that's up to you on your goals and how you want the process to work. And what you'll also want to do is gather as much detail about your participants as possible. So, like I spoke earlier about my background, find out who they are as people. What are their hobbies? What are their personalities? What are their learning styles? As well as those career goals and those strengths and weaknesses and, you know, all of that stuff. You really want to give it a real holistic point of view. Number 4 is to match the mentors and mentees. Now, for me, this is the absolute pinnacle of a successful mentoring program. There is nothing worse to the credibility of a mentoring program than not matching them appropriately. It can be really agonizing for both parties if they just don't get on. So that's why step 3 is really important for getting that real quality information about a person as well as what it is that they're looking to do. It may be that you want to include the mentors and mentees in the selection process. So it could be that you go to the mentor with 3 people that you think they would be suitable with and let them decide who they want to be matched with. And that can be a really good way of gaining that buy-in as well from both parties, because they're much more willing to prove that it'll work as well. And then number 5, before the program begins, it's really helpful to train your mentors so that they understand your expectations and how best to support their mentees. That's something we do at the Girls Network as well. We have a really comprehensive training program that we deliver before the mentors even go anywhere near the program themselves. And we do that because they matter just as much as the mentees. Their well-being and their belief in the program as well is incredibly important. So those are the 5 key steps to implementation that I would recommend. Then there's also the types of mentoring programs that you might want to consider. So this is not an exhaustive list at all, but these are the main schemes that you will see around. So you've got peer mentoring, or what a lot of people call buddy schemes. Again, that can work really well for onboarding, providing someone with a buddy, and giving that peer-to-peer mentoring and that advice to each other can really help maintain morale as well. Reverse mentoring, where you can help junior members mentor senior staff members, and that might be something that's really useful for you if you're working in an industry or a company who haven't had a brand refresh perhaps for a while, or feel like they're moving a little bit away from relevance. Maybe the junior members of the team can really bring a fresh perspective to it. Traditional mentoring is as good as any. That traditional style of mentoring a senior person, mentoring a more junior person one-on-one. It might be that it's their direct line manager, or it could be that it's someone from a different department as well. You've also got social change mentoring, and that's something akin to the Girls Network, something where your employees have the opportunity to do some community outreach and actually change the course of those young people that are in the community. So it could be that you do something like that where the employees become the mentors, and in that they learn so much from the mentees anyway. And then this is a really good one to think about if you are a very small team. You might be a one-man team and you might be wanting to implement a program, but it all seems a bit too big for you at the moment. So you can do something like short-term mentoring over the course of a quarter with a small group of people that's more of a trial. Or you could also try something like flash mentoring, which I find really valuable and sometimes still participate in myself as a mentee. And that's when you are focusing on one issue at hand, rather than a big long-term goal that you have. And it will be maybe over a lunch break, a quick 45 minutes together where you can brainstorm with each other. And that can be really powerful as well for anyone who feels like they might not have the capacity to implement a full mentoring program right now. So those are the types of mentoring programs as well. I seem to have survived my coughing fit, so hopefully we'll get to the end without you having to hear me splutter anymore. So here is a quick list of a few companies that I think are doing really great things with mentoring programs at the moment. So the first one is General Electric. Now, what they do is harness the female empowerment in their mentoring program, and actually they have been doing this for close to 10 years now. So if you do want to know about a company that have been able to implement a really successful and actually sustainable mentoring program, they are the ones to look into. You've also got Caterpillar's Guardian program, and that actually focuses on new starters and actually is helping to really boost the safety for the employees when they start. You've got Bain and Company, and what they've done is they deliberately, and actually on quite a formal basis, pair mentors and mentees who are from vastly different backgrounds. And what that's helping them to do is support their mentees at a really authentic level of inclusion. And it's really done great things for helping them to develop a culture that's really open-minded, really tolerant, and as a result, really effective and productive. And then Santander as well. So again, they focus on women, but what they actually do is focus on female entrepreneurs, and they'll match fast growth female entrepreneurs with people from other industries who've been there, done that, and can listen to them and give them that advice. So 4 companies there with very different approaches to mentoring programs, but nevertheless, it suits their needs, it suits their goals as organizations, and as a result, it's done some really good things for them. So I'd absolutely recommend you do a bit of research around that as well. And finally, just a little bit more about the Girls Network, another great organization that implements mentoring programs. This is a little insight into the young women and girls that we work with. You can see some of the mentors in there as well. And essentially, our aim is to empower and inspire girls from the least advantaged areas of where we are. To give them those 3 things: that self-belief, those access to opportunities, and those skills, more importantly, as well. Another great way of boosting your CSR efforts as well is by partnering with someone like the Girls Network. There's absolutely tons of amazing mentoring programs out there. So I'd really recommend looking into it. And again, this is a testimonial from a member of a corporate partner, and this is them actually thanking the corporate partner for allowing them to be part of it, because they're getting so much satisfaction out of it. So again, it can do really great things for your employees' engagement and also their levels of satisfaction working for the company. This is a little insight into how you might want to track your mentoring program as well. So as I said earlier, it's really important that you figure out how you're going to track your mentoring program at the beginning. We tend to track our program by looking at how their confidence is improved, how positive they feel about their futures, and how much belief they have in themselves and their ability to succeed. The numbers speak for themselves in terms of the program, but that's just a little insight into how you might want to track your own progress as well. And I will finish with a quote from this wonderful woman. And it's something that we say to our girls all the time at the Girls Network, but actually it's something that should be taken through, I believe, to adulthood as well. You really can't be what you can't see. And from my point of view, my mentor showed me that. She showed me that what she can do, I can do too. And that really is one of the most powerful things from a mentoring program. So that's me. I survived without coughing all over you. I'm very happy to answer any questions if anyone has any. And I hope you gain some valuable insights into that as well.
Thank you so much, Carla, for this lovely presentation. I enjoyed it. And now we can move on to the Q&A part of this live event. So the first question is, mentors are very important, and you've been talking about senior and junior mentees. Do you think that peer mentors can be suitable?
Absolutely. I actually think that for a lot of employees, peer mentoring can be a really nice gateway into mentoring itself. So sometimes for some people, the prospect of having a mentor feels a little bit too formal for them. And it really takes them a while to really warm up and be comfortable with sharing that part of themselves and sharing their ideas and things. So actually, peer mentoring, if you have quite a quiet workforce who don't necessarily feel very open with their ideas, peer mentoring could be the way to go. And as I said earlier, actually, it's a great one for onboarding as well.
Yes, we have a similar question to this, like how important is the onboarding process when setting up a mentoring program? So since you mentioned the onboarding, yes, how important is it when setting up a mentoring program?
It is. So I have two golden rules for personally for making a mentoring program work. The first one is to get senior leadership on board. And that is going to, that is usually your biggest challenge. It may be that you're not investing like cold hard cash into a mentoring program, but someone will be investing a lot of time and resources, personal resources into, the mentoring program. And it's incredibly important that you are given that time and that resource to do that work and that prep, because we have to remember that we're dealing with real people here, and we're promising these people and giving these people a window into what could be. And if that isn't delivered in the way that they expect, that can have really negative effects. And that's when a mentoring program doesn't become sustainable. So I really would follow those first three points I made around the key logistics of mentoring, understanding the goals, understanding the outline of the process, absolutely are really important. I would potentially spend a good quarter of a full 3 months just thinking about what it's going to look like and what the logistics are for it. But I'd be happy to pick up with anyone offline, actually, if they wanted a bit more detail about that.
Yes, thank you so much. Another question says, learning and mentoring programs are a huge part of our organization, but how can we ensure that more employees participate in the programs we set up?
Oh, well, first of all, amazing. I'm so glad that you're already invested in it. Secondly, this is such a common challenge for people, specifically in the L&D sector. I find that, the people that have engaged in the mentoring program so far, what are their thoughts? Have they had a positive experience?
Mhm.
If so, get them to share the experience, and ask them to be your cheerleaders, because they're the customers. They've, at the end of the day, they're the ones who've been there and done that. And I would really harness that as well. So absolutely do that. I would try and share the impact. So again, tracking the progress of your mentoring program, the stuff that you're doing right now. What are the success stories? Do you have data that backs up how great mentoring is? And if you have, share it as much as possible. Make sure that everyone is hearing about the benefits of mentoring. And then lastly, I would again really identify who the influencers in your company are. So who are the people that others follow, and can you get them on board if they aren't already? Can you target them, get them on board, and get them to, spread the word for you? And actually, one last one that's come to mind is around transparency. A really practical piece of advice is to do what I think is a pretty well-known term, an ask me anything session. It could be that you do drop-in sessions of like 15-minute intervals where people can just pop into a virtual room with you, or in the office if you're office-based again, and they can just come in and ask you anything. There's no silly question. And create that real open door policy where if someone's on the fence about it, they don't feel uncomfortable coming to ask. And I think all of those things combined, hopefully, will get you a little bit more engagement in the program.
Yes, thanks. And also gathering a lot of data. Yes, that's the key. Okay, another question arrived just now. Do you have any blogs or mentoring books that you recommend?
Oh, well, I would recommend our website, the Girls Network. We have a blog on our website. We have tons of impact reports and data around mentoring itself. But you'll also be able to hear from the mentees as well, and the mentors in those as well, that can help you with that.
Okay, thanks. Another question says, what should mentees do to contribute to a successful mentoring program?
So something that we tell our mentees is that mentors are there for them. They're really friendly, they're there to help them, but they're also not mind readers. So it's really important that as a mentee, you are open and honest and clear about what it is that you want to get out of the program. You'll find that happens more often than not when you have the traditional senior mentor with a junior mentee. The junior mentee might not feel like they can be as open and honest in the beginning, but it's really important that the mentor understands the goals that the mentee has. And that is the biggest thing the mentee could do for the mentor. The second one is to remain committed, 100% committed. Nothing is ever achieved without that. And it's up to the mentee to recognize that the hard work actually comes from them. It comes less from the mentor and more from the mentee. They just have to be really open to push themselves out of their comfort zone, say yes more often than they say no, and be clear about what the goals are that they have.
Yes, and be more involved. I agree. Another question says, how can we align mentoring programs to suit people from different ethnicities? Should we match mentors and mentees from the same ethnic background or mix them?
That is a question that will be answered when you've done that first stage of the key logistics. So, what are the goals of your mentoring program? Now, sometimes we will match people based on their personal identifiers, whatever that is, for example, ethnicity. That is a great thing to do when you have mentees of a certain ethnicity who aren't being given that equal access to growth opportunities, and who might not trust actually the senior leaders who are from a differing ethnicity. Predominantly, it could be the predominantly white male middle class kind of mentor. It may not be that appeals to somebody who's in a more junior role from a different ethnicity, and that's okay too. But what I would say is that ultimately, match people on their personalities, not their personal identifiers.
Yeah.
And I would go with that 99% of the time, unless your goal is to bring a certain ethnicity into the fore and show them that actually you can do something. And here's the person who looks and sounds like you that can tell you about it.
Yes. And another similar question, which will be our final for today, it says how to implement a mentoring program for remote workers, how to keep them engaged.
Well, we are just doing that at the moment. Actually, we're just piloting an online mentoring program. And I would say to, first of all, use the tools that we have to our disposal. So there's some absolutely fabulous online tools out there. Obviously, you're going to be using Zoom or Teams primarily. Try to access the things like something called Slido is something that I've been using recently, which is a great engagement tool that is very easily linked into your Zoom or your Teams accounts. And what it means is people can engage with the slides. They can do polls and quizzes and different word clouds, and make use of the breakout room features. Essentially get used to all of those different features that the online platforms, use. Other things you could do is you could also, depending on how vast your remote workers are, like if they're all in the same country, then you could, there's nothing wrong with posting certain things to them to give it a bit more of a reality. So you might want to post a kit to them with a pen and a pad, and or maybe a list, or sometimes even a contract that they can sign and send back. And it's that that personal agreement that they're going to be committed to the program. But yeah, I hope that makes sense. It generally really harnessing the power of technology is going to help.
Yes, it makes sense, and especially for Slido, I've been using it in the past, so it's very helpful. Yeah, for
Mm,
those who don't know it, look into it.
it's a great tool, yeah.
Yes. Okay, then we will have to wrap this up because 1 hour is approaching. Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation and for your responses to all of these questions. There are some others that weren't expressed till now, so we'll have to deal with them later. You can always search for us on LinkedIn and ask Carla more questions there if you want. Thank you to everyone who attended this live event. In the following days, we'll send you all the materials, the slides, the video, and the resources. For more HR events like this one and other videos connected to human resources, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and stay on top of all current trends. You can also join our HR community where you can continue discussing this topic with HR professionals from all around the world. And of course, in the end, don't hesitate to add me or Carla on LinkedIn for any further questions or doubts you may have on this topic. Thank you so much, Carla.
Thank you.
Bye.